Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Leader Lab. This is Leadership Shorts, quick thoughts to help you level up your leadership. My name is Chad Wright. I'm the founder of Forward Partners, and I'm joined, as always, by my partner in podcasting, Emily Grace Deal. Emily Grace Deal, what are we talking about today?
Today we have a question.
Okay.
I've become very frustrated at work. I should have been promoted already and haven't been. I'm trying to be patient and content, but I just end up getting frustrated and angry.
I would imagine this question could be repeated hundreds of thousands of times across the country.
Yeah.
I think it's easy. I've been in this mode before. We've probably all been in that mode where it's like, why is this not happening for me yet? I should be there. And I think it's interesting because should is an interesting word. I should have this promotion. I should be making this much money. I should have this life or whatever it is. Ultimately, it's a sign that we are kind of comparing ourselves to some ideal future. And because we're not there, we're going to be upset. And there's this fascinating book I finished. It's called The Gap and the Gain. And it's by Dan Sullivan. It is a super easy read. And it's a very interesting concept. And the concept is honestly, it's so simple, and you kind of wonder, can something so simple really change our lives? But it really talks about this idea that you're either living in the gap or the gain. And if you're living in the gap, and the person who sent this question is absolutely living in the gap, you are always comparing where you are today to the ideal future, to this perfect paragon of here's what I want.
Okay.
Or you're comparing it to something external to yourself. Like, I should be like that person. You know, that person on Instagram that it's clear they have everything that I should have.
Right.
I should be like them. You're comparing to an external thing. So if you're comparing to external or an ideal future, you're living in the gap. And what's going to happen there is you're never going to be happy, because you're never going to get there. And everything that happens, every challenge, every good thing, everything that happens is happening to you. And often it's happening to you to stop you from getting there. So it makes things extra frustrating, right? If I think I should be somewhere, and every time I start to make progress, something comes up and I have to deal with it, that's happening to me to stop me.
That makes sense.
And I think when life is happening to you, there's this lack of agency. There's, what do I do about it? It's happening to me, you know, and we can get stuck in that mode. And so I think this person is probably experiencing that. And I know as I read the book and started to examine it, I started to realize how often I've lived in the gap. And their idea is you can moment to moment switch between the two. And so living in the gap, that's what that looks like. Living in the gain is fascinating, because what it says is you never compare yourself to the future or anything external. You always compare yourself to where you've been.
Okay, that makes sense.
And how far you've come. And you actually brought this up a couple episodes ago. You were thinking about progress with your kids. When you can point to that progress, it just changes how you view things, because you're like, wow, we really are doing it. Even though today is tough.
Right.
We're really doing well.
Right. Well, it's so easy with parenting, right? Because especially when we do look at, like, the social media is a really good example, right?
Yeah.
If you look at social media and you see somebody else's curated life on there, then it's so easy to be like, oh my gosh, look at that person. There's the best mom ever.
Yes.
And then compare yourself to that and then be like, well, that clearly makes me the worst mom ever, right?
Exactly.
Instead of being able to be like, I am a better mom than I was, a week ago, 24 hours ago, or whatever it may be.
That's it. And I had a session the other day where the person was thinking about quitting. They were thinking about leaving their industry. They were burned out. They were frustrated. They were mad. And a lot of what they were mad about was I should be further ahead. I should be in a different position. I should be making more money. I should. Like, there was should all over the place. And so I heard that, and he was really frustrated. He was literally on the verge of like, I think I'm going to quit. Like, it's going to happen fast. And I said, well, let me ask you something. Tell me about your life before you started in this industry, which was a decade earlier. And he goes, oh my gosh, man. He said, let me tell you, I was about to go bankrupt. I was about to lose my house. I was about to be living in my car. Relationship with family was not great through this period. And he said, golly, that was rough. I said, well, what does life look like today? And he said, oh, and he just starts grinning. He goes, I own 2 houses now, and I drive a Mercedes SUV, and I've got a great relationship with my family, and I've got all these things and these opportunities and all this happening. And he's just grinning the whole time. And it was such a beautiful example to me of when you're living in the gap, I should have this, I should have that, literally miserable enough to quit.
Yeah.
You flip it around and go, where have you come from? And the smile was so big. He was like, he finally stopped and he goes, I really do have it pretty good, don't I?
Yeah.
And it was this realization when you're looking back and how far you've come. You're like, man, things really are great. And what I have found is that exact technique of choosing to look back. It is so helpful for me.
Yeah.
Because I can get, business wise, this is our 20th year in business. Not for Forward Partners, but I've spent the last 20 years owning businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can get a lot of, well, after 20 years, I should be better at this. I should be making more money. I should be larger. I should, It's so easy to get in that mode. But when I think back to, I was actually doing this the other day because we had a challenge pop up. I don't even remember what it was, but I got really frustrated and we should be better at this, or I should have this fixed by now. And usually it comes back to me, right? I should have figured that out by now. I stopped and I actually thought back to like when we were working out of Wilco Workspaces in like 2021, 2022. And I thought about the state of the business then. And I was like, oh my gosh. It is night and day difference where we are just in the last few years.
It's wild.
It is crazy the impact we get to have, the people we get to work with, how we're functioning as a team, how the team is growing. And I went immediately from frustrated at myself because I hadn't figured something out in 20 years to, wow, look at
it's
the
almost the
progress.
idea of like taking that. For you, it was better to take a step even backwards to move forwards. And sometimes
100%.
if we think that to be the best, we only can go in you're just pushing in a direction that might not be the best for you.
Yeah. There's sometimes that step back is helpful, but being able to judge that is so helpful. When you're living in the gap, you're not going to judge that accurately.
Well, and I think for me too, a lot of times to kind of avoid the gap, the first thought for me sometimes is comparing it to someone who has less. And that's not always great either,
because
right?
that's an external comparison,
well,
right?
and it just makes me feel shame. It makes me feel bad.
Yes.
And it doesn't actually help. So it goes both ways, not only comparing to people who have more, but people who have less.
Absolutely.
It doesn't really help you.
Yeah.
So it's really like yourself as the mile marker, yourself as the comparison is really the way to go.
But when you say, look at the mom I was 4 years ago versus today. Look at the podcast host.
It weirded me out that you said 4 years, and I was like, I was a mom 4 years ago, 6 years ago.
You're your mom 6 years ago. Like, it comes at you fast, doesn't it? Yes. Life goes really quick. You've progressed as a mom. Look at you're hosting a podcast now. Like 3-4 years ago, you wouldn't have even thought that was a thing. In fact, you didn't when I first asked you.
164 episodes.
164 episodes in now, as a designer, as a creative director, as a designer of challenge coins, all the things that we get to do, everything is progressing and getting better. And that perspective, it just changes everything. It changes our perspective on challenges. It changes our perspective on what's ahead because now we can see how far we've come. And it generates this energy of like, man. And I think there's a lot of that. We talk about get to versus have to. I think when you're in the gap, it's always about I have to do this. When you're in the gain, it's always about, can you believe we get to do this? And I think that makes a huge, huge difference.
Yeah, definitely.
This is a fascinating question. I would encourage you guys, leaders, let's talk next steps. Check out that book, The Gap and the Gain. It's by Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy. Super easy read. This concept, though, of the gap and the gain, what I want you to do is to start to spot when you're frustrated or when you're telling yourself the story that you should be further ahead or you should have something figured out. Stop and really recognize, are you comparing yourself to some ideal future or something external? Or are you comparing yourself to where you've come from? Because I promise you, when you look back at where you've come from, whether it's family, professionally, your own growth as a leader, you're going to smile because you have made so much progress. And living in the gain, you're able to spot that and it changes your perspective on everything you do. So I want you to start to be cognizant of that. Start to spot when you're living in the gap and just start thinking about where you've come from and see if it doesn't change your perspective on everything around that situation that you're in. If people want to send us books to read, if they want to send us books to dive into and kind of dissect,
we have a book goal. So.
We have a book goal. We're all trying to read a ton of books this year. If they want to send us any of that, where do they send that to?
To lab@forwardpartners.net.
Lab@forwardpartners.net. If they want to find us online where we're putting out leadership content all the time to help, where do they find that?
@ForwardPartner.
@ForwardPartner on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. Thank you so much for hosting, Emily.
Thank you.
We've come a long way in 164 episodes.
Yes.
John Porchlight Productions Vineyard is always making these episodes
he's definitely part
better.
of that.
Oh my gosh, the quality of what we're producing today versus where we started, you're doing a great job. Emily, for bringing the vibes. The vibes are getting better every day. This team, I love the growth of it. We're getting so much more done. We're having such a good time.
She's the reason we're reading so much.
She is really the reason we're reading so much. She's a little crazy. I'll be honest with you. We appreciate you guys. We look at, how many people watched our first episode. I'm pretty sure it was just your mom. I don't even think my mom watched. She didn't know it existed for like several episodes. You guys are here and we love you for that. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for engaging with this. We hope it's helpful for you. Please share this with fellow leaders. If you know leaders who it's very clear they're living in the gap, that I should be somewhere, share this idea with them and see how this concept affects them. We'll see you next time right here in the Leader Lab for Leadership Shorts.